This talk is about Plone API, simple API for the future. So that's me with a coconut. I'm on GitHub or Twitter. I'm Jill Forcada. I work at the Freitag, a German weekly newspaper, and I'm part of the. I've been around here in Plone community for a while already, 6-7 years, and I'm part of the testing team. Before diving into actually what's Plone API or so, just a quick survey just to see what people do know about already. So who knows Plone API or what's Plone API? Okay. So who uses it already? Okay, perfect. So Plone API, it's a Python distribution for Plone, of course, that tries to provide a simple API to interface with Plone to cover roughly the usual 20% of the tasks that any Plone developer needs to or uses on their regular tasks 80% of the time. So like the regular bulk of interactions with Plone that you need, most of them are covered here in a nice API. Actually, I haven't done much of that. I just talking about it and cheerleading it because it's a great package. So actually, that was done at during these sprints some years ago. Especially if you happen to meet with Zupo, just congratulate him because that was an amazing idea that they came up with. But especially all the people involved, or mainly all the people involved on those two sprints were the main ones behind it. So why they did it to begin with? With you have seen Plone already celebrates this year the 15th anniversary, and the package behind or the application server Zope that it's used Plone uses, it's even older. So of course, 15 years ago there was a cool way to do things. 3 years later there was a new way. 5 years later yet another way, and you end up with 15 ways to get the exact same results, but in different paths. So that's for anyone that's new. That's kind of like a bit of a scary or uncertain. Like, okay, I'm trying to get a user this way, but now I'm checking this other add-on and is using it in a different way. Is my code right? Is that wrong? Is there any performance benefit of one or the other? Is there why there's so many ways to do things? On top of that, there's always like inconsistencies. Like there's some APIs that use username, or others use user ID on their method calls. And at the end, Plone has almost 300 packages, all in all. So if you want to start like really learning, so where do you start? What's the basic functionality that I can get from Plone? How to bootstrap your teams with to get productive. Oh, you're here. So he's the one. You should be doing the talk actually. So that was basically the main, like as I was saying, how do you actually get the Plone side route? Actually, that always happened to me. I never ever remember what's the actual import that I have to do to just call that method that gets you the Plone side route. I never ever learned that by hand. Or checking permissions if you are checking permissions for an object or just for that permission or in a different user. All these, it's just at least for me, it's just impossible to remember all the APIs that I need to use. So fortunately, Plone API come to the rescue. So what I was saying before, the goals are, or so far have been, to cover only really not everything, because then you are just building yet another layer on top of Plone. That's not the idea. The idea of Plone API is not that it's your only one shop for everything. Everything will. The idea is that not everything will be there, because there's no really need, and then the APIs will will be just so bloated that then the point of making it easier for newcomers and making it usable and approachable, then you miss that completely. But the really core features that Plone API provides, those are like really the ones that you use on a daily basis, and that are that really time savings. And for that, it provides a clear API methods. You will see in short. Everything is in one place, so you don't have to remember like what any of those 300 packages were. Okay, so it's permission. So probably that's access control, but that's maybe the permission is somewhere else, and so and so. So no, everything is in a single place. It's you can really, as Philip was showing us before, it's really important that when you are looking at something, to see where actually the code is, where the implementation is. So keeping everything easy and in the same package, it's really easy just to browse the few files, the few Python files, and all the methods, and see what's actually there, what functionality is bringing. And especially for Plone, that's like a rare abyss, like really something strange, but it's a really nice API. Just like, for example, if anyone has used the requests library to do some HTTP requests, that's sane. That's so nice to do HTTP. If you have to use HTTP lib or URL lib or some URL lib 2 or 3, or I mean they even make 3 versions of URL lib, so that speaks. And Plone API is probably the first and only API so far in Plone that's really Pythonic, that really feels comfortable to type to. When you look at the code and you see some Plone API code there, basically it speaks by itself. You don't really need to put any comments. You don't need to get into the methods to learn what's actually doing. That everything is there. But so how did they get there? How they came up with not only the Plone API, but what need to be there, and what and how to do it. They started with, and that's probably something crucial for the Plone API project, that they didn't start writing any single line of code. Instead, they did document-driven development. So first of all, they said, well, we are using Plone. We know that it's so complex, and everyone is telling us that. So what do we want to get? Let's document. Let's come up with some descriptions, some ideas of what we would like to have. So we want to be able to get users. We want to get the portal route. We want to manage content. So those will be the building blocks. So they created first the documentation with all the functionality that they would like to have, without even writing a single line of code, just dreaming or thinking out loud or writing it down actually what they wanted to do. And only after they were happy with that, then they started so document-driven development, then testing-driven development, so that everything was tested. Actually, the documentation itself of Plone API, it's testable already. So if you modify the documentation and you make a mistake, tests will fail, so you will know that you have made the mistake on the documentation itself. And even so, the path, first making the documentation, then making the tests together with the code, that was really like setting the path to really get a good project and a good code base and a good organization of the code. But especially that's supposed to be style guide driven development, because if you're starting a package and you are that was done by the community, it was not a code drop from a company like, hey, we come up with this, there you go. But instead was something done by the community. So community is someone from here, from Boston, somebody from New Zealand, from somebody from India. So you need to set some style guides. So they come up with a code style guide. They come up with a release how-to. They come up with how to contribute, and all of that it's on their documentation. And they went even a step further and pushed all of that upstream to the community. So now what started as being the code style guide for the Plone API, now it's the Plone's style guide. Of course, not all the code has been changed. There's an ongoing effort on that, and you are welcome to join that. But it can feel that it's not like so much relevant. At the end, you just want the functionality to work. But setting a style guide allows you that whenever somebody comes with you with a laptop, oh, I have a problem, and then you see the code, if the patterns are recognizable, then it's far more easier. If just like it's easier for probably most of you to understand any Latin language rather than a Chinese language, because you see the patterns, you see the spaces, you see the punctuations, you see the breaking points. Instead, Chinese or Japanese, they don't have spaces in between letters because they don't have the concept of letters either. So, and that's way more easier for you to understand if you already know other Latin languages. So if you keep a style guide and you enforce it and you keep and you follow it, then all the code will feel the same. All the code will be far more easier to change, far more easier to adapt, far more easier to read, which is at the end what the most time we spend way more time reading than writing code. So just some quick examples, and that's easier to remember. If I want to get I cannot even ask you what's actually that doing. It's already telling you. It's the API to get you get the portal, the Plone site portal. That's it. It's easy to remember. It's easy to get. Wherever you spot that inside any code, you know what's that doing instead of all those random imports and so on. If you want to see if Avam can build the portal, then that's all you have to do. Check the has permission on the user. That's and still, for example, here, instead of creating a variable to get the portal and then assigning it on the object, you can already do, or it feels natural to also to use that call here, because everything so it fits. It's not anymore so much complex to get the portal. You can embed it inside other function calls without actually making it that bloat and all things that intricate. That's well, something that I love from Plone API, the copy one, because if you actually look at the implementation of content copy, you will see that it's just madness what you have to do. You have to copy the object, and you get a clipboard, and then you have to paste that clipboard somewhere. It's just like it's just so much verbose that you miss the point that you are just copying, and that's the key here. You just see well, it's 3 lines of code, but it's a single method call that does the copying. You don't have to you don't have to go all around with the clipboard, and then maybe the clip you have to pass it around, and then it's way more simpler, way more saner. It gets you done, and be with it, and deal with the things that do matter the most. But there's, I mean, with Plone API, it's just like a candy store. Everything is good, and everything everything is good, everything is nice, and there's always, when you start with good things, then just new good things come. And I'm not sure if any one of you has been looking at the pull requests sent to Plone API. No, sorry, that's later. So yeah, so good things that comes with Plone API. Actually, I did that by myself. At some point I started moving all my code to use Plone API wherever I could. So that's why actually I wrote this Flake8 Plone API plugin. So if you use Flake8 or Plone Recipe Code Analysis, another package that runs Flake8 as well, this will give you hints that you are using a method call somewhere that could be changed to Plone API. So reducing the amount of packages that you depend on first, and cleaning and making your code far more readable. And I was doing that at work, like every now and then, spending some minutes, some hours changing that, and the code afterward, just looking the before and after, it's just like so much refreshing, so much clean. And especially if you have, if you don't have to look for yourself at all of that, but instead you rely on Flake8 to report for that, then you just need to really know what have to be changed, or you already know where to go to change things. But then and then as you use Plone API and the API, it's so nice. Then if you have your spaghetti code thrown there, you start seeing like those little gems here and there, and then it gives you it empowers you, it makes you feel bad for your code, so you want to have a saner, a nicer API, just like Plone API. So it's not just about replacing the code, but also actually making your code even better. And just that's like a perfect example. Or if you ever need a reference to look at how to do things or so, Plone API, it's a perfect package to look for how to do everything. All the best practices are encoded there, and that's what I got before, a bit ahead. Those are pull request numbers, and done by completely different persons. One of them even it's by me. Certainly not done by the creator of Plone API. That's the great thing, and all of them have I mean, I just grabbed the last few ones, but all of them have all of them do change these 4 files. They add a changelog entry. They modify and expand the documentation explaining what the new functionality that they are being adding is about. They do add tests, and finally, of course, they do add the implementation. And if you look at the average pull requests in Plone, now because we have something to enforce it, but they do add, or people do add the changelog, and of course the code. but nearly nobody is adding the documentation, and most, but not always, people is adding tests. But the nice thing with Plone API is that you see that everything is there. The doc strings are there. All the surrounding code is done in a way that you feel obligated, or you feel the need to not to keep it as nice and as clean as it is. So just because it was done in a nice way and it was consistently done in a specific style guide and everything, you see that all the code done by totally completely different persons and at different times in the year and for some different years, but still all of them follow the same rules, which means that any person, which means that everyone do understand what are the ways that Plone API wants things to have, so things are kept, or so the quality, the standards quality is as high as it is. It's not like it started really nice because he made it so nice, but then people just don't care and just I throw my patch here and I just run for it because I don't have more time. But instead, people do take the time, and you actually feel that you can actually point them, hey, you forgot the documentation, please do that, because everyone else did that. So in a way, for the next one that comes afterwards, the documentation is up to date, there's test coverage, and the functionality is there with the doc strings and the change logs and everything. Plone API, so you can find, of course, it's released on PyPy. The code is on GitHub. I was wondering if to put it or not on the slides, but like all the API methods that are available. But the documentation is really nice, and it's already integrated into the docsplone.org. So just go there. It's linked from PyPy, so you can easily go there. It's tested at every change on Travis, and of course also it checks the coverage on coveralls.io, so that everything we can see if there's any if it lowers or not. Again, best practices, and more best practices. Future, of course. There's, like, for example, there's one that I'm missing a lot lately, that I'm usually always trying to get the portal URL. So if anyone feels like getting the portal URL, why not? That feels like a standard 20-80% rule. Run upgrades. I'm obsessed with making upgrade steps for everything. So that's something that maybe that's just more for me than for anyone. And basically, Plone API now it's in version 1.5. So it's had already 5 minor releases after the first one. So it's basically rock solid, stable. There's of course few bugs here, there, and new API proposals that are on GitHub. But yes.
May I? The portal.get portal URL. I think the second port is a bit redundant, so just get other URL.
Sure.
Minor.
Yeah. Right. That's code review. Thanks. If you ever want to start looking at any Plone package, please, be that Plone API, that would be like you can see like all the best practices and then go to the dark corners of Plone. But at least so that you get a bit of a peace of mind that there's some sane code inside Plone still. So if anyone is up for sprinting, I will probably be doing something testing related, but I will be glad to help anyone on that. And I'm done. Thanks for listening. And I think have time for questions, probably. So. Yes.
I like Plone API a lot, especially since it was moved into Plone 4. I've been refactoring all my code to use it because, I mean, honestly, Plone's inherited so much from like SOAP and CMF and everything that it could really use a layer of abstraction. But now I'm looking back at like if I need to modify some core Plone behavior, they don't use Plone API anymore. Is there a plan to refactor that so it uses that?
That's like you know, this 2020 ongoing discussion about what Plone's future and so on. More or less in a small scale also happened with Plone API. Using Plone API in core means that Plone API should not use core, because then you have circular dependencies. So for me, yes, I would totally love to be able to use this Flake 8 Plone API and just replace everything, because it will be so much readable. But then that means that either we get all the dependencies that Plone API relies on and we put everything there, so it's like a massive amount of, well, we could create a module like don't look here and then put all the dependencies there. But that's probably not sustainable in the long run. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I see your point and I share your desire. The technical part, it's a bit more complex, but of course you can bring that up in communityplone.org anytime and see how the pillow fight goes. Yeah. It's would be really nice. Please.
What's the current state of the issue check? Are a lot of issues open and waiting for requests for review? If you know from the top of your head.
Pull requests open, I think that there's one or two, and there's issues, there's a handful of them, sure. Some are like, let's add this new thing, but nobody step up to do it. And there's a few bugs indeed, and there's the still ongoing discussion with user ID, username, and probably that will require a 2.0 version just to make sure that we don't break semantic versioning. Again, something that was introduced by Plone API, best practice, use semantic versioning. But not that that activity, it's quite low. So like really people, I guess that everyone is using it and being happy with it. And yeah, there were the ideas of adding new modules and so on, but now maybe things are moving more to the REST API thing. I mean, personally, this one that I was saying before, this get portal URL or portal get URL, and that's probably one of the few things that for myself I would like to have there, but I don't find myself wanting much more there so far. Not sure if anyone that's using it, if they do. But of course, just create an issue on on GitHub Plone API, and we can discuss and add the functionality if needed. More questions? Yeah.
I'm always trying to consider pseudo web stuff, and Plone API is actually really helpful. And when you are doing pseudo web stuff, you would like to benefit of this. Do you consider it as a security issue? Because if you consider that any pseudo web script or whatever Python script, whatever it is, gonna anyway apply the security and permission of the front user, do you think it is a security issue or not?
To use Plone API through the web, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a lot of methods on it that are totally secure, like getting the portal root, for example, or checking permissions, things. Creating content, maybe that's, well, I mean, at the end, even if it's from restricted Python, you will get the security checks. So far, it's I'm not on the security team, so I cannot really say that. But I would say that maybe it is, or especially, or if you know what you are doing, probably yes. Like really making it completely open, I'm not so sure. Especially with the problem with the doc strings that make that everything is public then, because all of them do have doc strings, so that would be probably a security concern for our great security team. But definitely that could be, or at least even a subset of it could be whitelisted. That's definitely. I have no idea how to whitelist things to be enabled through the web, but definitely there's material that could be and will make, of course, the code through the web in Rapido or so way more nicer. Sure. Mm-hmm. Any more questions?